Great. Thanks very much. Welcome, everyone. Thanks very much for coming together for this rich opportunity to not only learn from the written text that's in a book before us, but also to learn from the text of the faces of the people who are before us as well. We are going to be reading through the longest Torah portion, which is Parshat Naso. We'll read through the English translation of it. Then I'll share with you a bit of focus study about it, and then we'll have our collective collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to join me in saying the blessing that gives thanks for this moment of being together and immersing ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah, I invite you to do so. Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai
Adonai Eloheinu melech
Haolam
asher kishanu
Shanu
b'mitzvotav
B'tzivanu Ba'asot
so
Divrei
Torah.
Amen.
Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. So we're going to begin in the book of Numbers with chapter 4, starting with verse 21. I'll share the opening verses with you, and then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. God spoke to Moses, "Take a census of the Gershonites also by their ancestral house and by their clans. Record them from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who are subject to service in the performance of tasks for the tent of meeting. These are the duties of the Gershonite clans as to labor and porterage. They shall carry the cloths of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting with its covering, the covering of dolphin skin that is on top of it, and the screen for the entrance of the tent of meeting. The hangings of the enclosure, the screen at the entrance of the gate of the enclosure that surrounds the tabernacle, the cords thereof, and the altar, and all their service equipment, and all their accessories, and they shall perform the service. All the duties of the Gershonites, all their porterage, and all their service shall be performed on orders from Aaron and his sons. You shall make them responsible for attending to all their porterage. Those are the duties of the Gershonite clans for the tent of meeting. They shall attend to them under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest." Richard, would you like to read a little bit? We're at verse 29.
As for the Merarites, you shall record them by the clans of their ancestral house, to service in the performance of the duties for the tent of meeting. These are their porterage tasks in connection with their various duties for the tent of meeting: the planks, the bars, the posts, and the sockets of the tabernacle. All the posts around the enclosure and their sockets, pegs, and cords, all those furnishings and their service, you shall list by name the objects that are their porterage tasks. Those are the duties of the Merarite clans, pertaining to their various duties in the tent of meeting, under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest.
Thank you so much. Jay, would you like to read it a little bit? We're at verse 34.
34. Scroll down, just with me. Come back to me, Rabbi.
Okay, we'll come back to you. June, would you like to read? We're at verse 34 of chapter 4.
Rabbi. So Moses, Aaron, and the chieftains of the community recorded the Kohathites by the clans of their ancestral house from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who were subject to service for work relating to the tent of meeting. Those recorded by their clans came to 2750. That was the enrollment of the Kohathite clans, all those who performed duties relating to the tent of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron recorded at the command of the Lord through Moses. The Gershonites, who were recorded by the clans of their ancestral house from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who were subject to service for work relating to the tent of meeting. Those recorded by the clans of their ancestral house came to 2630. That was the enrollment of the Gershonite clans, all those performing duties relating to the tent of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron recorded at the command of the Lord. The enrollment of the Merarite clans by the clans of their ancestral house from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who were subject to service for work relating to the tent of meeting. Those recorded by their clans came to 3,200. That was the enrollment of the Merarite clans, which Moses and Aaron recorded at the command of the Lord through Moses. All the Levites whom Moses, Aaron, and the chieftains of Israel recorded by the clans of their ancestral houses, from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who were subject to duties of service and porterage relating to the tent of meeting. Those recorded came to 8,580. Each one was given responsibility for his service and porterage at the command of the Lord through Moses, and each was recorded as the Lord had commanded Moses.
Thanks, Jude. Howard, do you want to read a little bit tonight? We're at the very start of chapter 5. And you just need to unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure.
God spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the Israelites to banish from the camp all those afflicted with tazarat, anyone with discharge, and all those ritually defiled through contact with the dead. You must banish both male and female. You must send them outside the camp, so they not defile their camps in which I dwell among them." The Israelites did so. They sent them outside the camp. The Israelites did exactly as God had spoken to Moses. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelites, when a man or woman commits any of the following sins of man, acting treacherously against God, and that person is guilty, and confesses the sin he committed, he must make restitution for the principal amount of his guilt, add its fifth to it, and give it to the one against whom he was guilty. But if the man has no kinsman to whom to make restitution, the debt that should be restored is to be given to God, to the priest, besides the atonement ram through which expiation is made for him. Every raised offering of all the Israelites, holy things that they must bring to the priest, must belong to him. A person's holy things will belong to him. Whenever a man gives to the priest will be his. Whatever a man gives to the priest will be his." God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, should any man's wife stray, and he suspect that she has been unfaithful to him, by letting a man lie with her carnally, unbeknownst to her husband, and she was secluded, and she was defiled, and there was no witness against her, and she was not seized. If a spirit of suspicion had come upon him, and he had warned his wife, and she was defiled, or a spirit of suspicion had come upon him, and he had warned his wife, and she was not defiled, the man must bring his wife to the priest and bring her offering for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour. He must neither pour oil over it nor put frankincense on it, for it is a grain offering expressing jealousies, a grain offering of remembrance, recalling iniquity."
Thank you so much, Howard. Let me invite Jim. Would you like to read? We're now at verse 16.
Thank you, Rabbi. "The priest shall bring her forward and have her stand before Adonai. The priest shall take sacred water in an earthen vessel, and taking some of the earth that is on the floor of the tabernacle, the priest shall put it into the water. After he has made the woman stand before the Lord, the priest shall bear the woman's head and place upon her hands the meal offering of remembrance, which is a meal offering of jealousy. And in the priest's hands shall be the water of bitterness. That includes the spell. The priest shall adjure to the woman, saying to her, if no man has lain with you, if you have not gone astray in defilement while married to your husband, be immune to harm from this water of bitterness that induces the spell. But if you have gone astray while married to your husband and have defiled yourself, if a man other than your husband has had carnal relations with you, here the priest shall administer the curse of adjuration to the woman. As the priest goes on to say to the woman, may Adonai make you a curse and an imprecation among your people, as Adonai causes your thigh to sag and your belly to distend. May this water that induces the spell enter your body, causing the belly to distend and the thigh to sag. And the woman shall say, Amen, Amen.
Thank you so much. And let me invite Jay. Would you like to read now? We're at verse 23.
Thank you, Rabbi. The priest shall put these curses down in writing and rub it off into the water of bitterness. He is to make the woman drink the water of bitterness that induces the spell, so that the spell-inducing water may enter into her to bring on bitterness. Then the priest shall take from the woman's hand the grain offering of jealousy, elevate the grain offering before Hashem, and present it on the altar. The priest shall scoop out of the grain offering a token part of it and turn it into smoke on the altar. Last, he shall make the woman drink the water. Once he has made her drink the water, if she has defiled herself by breaking faith with her husband, the spell-inducing water shall enter into her to bring on bitterness, so that her belly shall distend and her thighs shall sag, and the woman shall become a curse among her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself and is pure, she shall be unharmed and able to retain seed. This is the ritual in cases of jealousy, when a woman goes astray while married to her husband and defiles herself, or when a fit of jealousy comes over a man and he gets wrought up over his wife, the woman shall be made to stand before Adonai, and the priest shall carry out all this ritual with her. The man shall be clear of guilt, but that woman shall suffer her guilt.
Thank you, Jay. We're now at the beginning of chapter 6. And Justin, would you like to read a little bit right there?
Thank you, Rabbi. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, a man or a woman who sets himself apart by making a Nazirite vow to abstain for the sake of the Lord, he shall abstain from new wine and aged wine. He shall not drink even vinegar from new wine or aged wine, nor shall he drink anything in which grapes have been steeped. And he shall eat neither fresh grapes nor dried ones. For the entire duration of his abstinence, he shall not eat any product of the grapevine, from seeds to skins. All the days of his vow of abstinence, no razor shall pass over his head, until the completion of the term that he abstains for the sake of the Lord. It shall be sacred, and he shall allow the growth of the hair on his head to grow wild. All the days that he abstains for the Lord, he shall not come into contact with the dead. To his father, to his mother, to his brother, or to his sister, he shall not defile himself if they die, for the crown of God is upon his head. For the entire duration of his abstinence, he is holy to the Lord. If someone in his presence dies unexpectedly or suddenly and causes the Nazirite head to become defiled, he shall shave off the hair of his head on the day of his purification. On the 7th day he shall shave it off, and on the 8th day he shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the Cohen at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The Cohen shall prepare one for the sin offering and one for burnt offering, and atone on his behalf for sinning by coming into contact with the dead, and he shall sanctify his head on that day. He shall consecrate to the Lord the period of his abstinence, and bring a lamb in its first year as a guilt offering. The previous days shall be cancelled because his Naziriteship has been defiled. This is the law of the Nazirite. On the day his period of Naziriteship is completed, he shall present himself at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He shall bring his offering to the Lord, one unblemished lamb in its first year as a burnt offering, one unblemished ewe lamb in its first year as a sin offering, and one unblemished ram as a peace offering, and a basket of unleavened cakes, loaves of fine flour, mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers anointed with oil, with their meal offerings and their libations.
Thank you so much. Let me invite Catherine. Would you like to continue? We're at verse 16.
Thank you, Rabbi. The priest shall present them before the Lord and offer the sin offering and the burnt offering. He shall offer the ram as a sacrifice of well-being to Adonai, together with the basket of unleavened cakes. The priest shall also offer the meal offerings and the libations. The Nazirite shall then shave his consecrated hair at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and take the locks of his consecrated hair and put them on the fire that is under the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall take the shoulder of the ram when it has been boiled, one unleavened cake from the basket and one unleavened wafer, and place them on the hands of the Nazirite after he has shaved his consecrated hair. The priest shall elevate them as an elevation offering before Adonai, and this shall be a sacred donation for the priest, in addition to the breast of the elevation offering and the thigh of gift offering. After that, the Nazirite may drink wine. Such is the obligation of a Nazirite, except that he who vows an offering to Adonai of what he can afford beyond his Nazirite requirements must do so exactly according to the vow he has made beyond his obligation as a Nazirite. Adonai spoke to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons. Thus shall you bless the people of Israel. Say to them, Adonai bless you and protect you. Adonai deal kindly and gracious with you. Adonai bestow his favor upon you and grant you peace. Thus they shall link my name with the people of Israel, and I will bless them."
Thank you so much. Mark Levinstein, we're at the very start of chapter 7. Would you like to read a little bit there?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. On the day that Moses finished setting up the tabernacle, he anointed and consecrated it and all its furnishings, as well as the altar and its utensils. When he had anointed and consecrated them, the chieftains of Israel, the heads of ancestral houses, namely the chieftains of the tribe, those who were in charge of enrollment, drew near and brought their offering before the Lord: 6 draught carts and 12 oxen, a cart for every 2 chieftains, and an ox for each one. When they had brought them before the tabernacle, Adonai said to Moses, "Accept these from them for use in the service of the tent of meeting, and give them to the Levites according to their respective services." Moses took the carts and the oxen and gave them to the Levites. 2 carts and 4 oxen he gave to the Gershonites as required for their service, and 4 carts and 8 oxen he gave to the Merarites as required for their service, in the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron, the priest. The Kohathites he did not give any, since theirs was the service of the most sacred objects. Their porterage was by shoulder. The chieftains also brought the dedication offering for the altar upon its being anointed. As the chieftains were presenting their offerings before the altar, Adonai said to Moses, let them present their offerings for the dedication of the altar, one chieftain each day. The one who presented his offering on the first day was Nashon, son of Aminadab, of the tribe of Judah. His offering, one silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, and one silver basin of 70 shekels by the sanctuary weight, both filled with choice flour with oil mixed in for a meal offering. One gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, one bull of the herd, one ram, and one lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, one goat for a sin offering, and for his sacrifice of well-being, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 yearling lambs. That was the offering of Nashon, son of Aminadab.
Thank you so much, Mark. Let me invite David and Susan, if you'd like to continue there. We're at verse 18.
Thank you, Rabbi.
On the second day, Nathanael, son of Zuar, chieftain of Issachar, made his offering. He presented as his offering 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels and 1 silver basin of 70 shekels by the sanctuary weight, both filled with choice flour with oil mixed in for a meal offering. 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense. 1 bull of the herd, 1 ram, and 1 lamb in its first year for a burnt offering. 1 goat for a purgation offering, and for his sacrifice of well-being, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 yearling lambs. That was the offering of Nathanael, son of Zuar. On the third day, it was the chieftain of the Zebulunites, Eliab, son of Helon. His offerings, 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, and 1 silver basin of 70 shekels by the sanctuary weight, both filled with choice flour with oil mixed in for a meal offering. 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 bull of the herd, 1 ram, and 1 lamb in its first year for a burnt offering. 1 goat for a purgation offering, and for his sacrifice of well-being, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 yearling lambs. That was the offering of Eliab, son of Helon.
On the fourth day, the chieftain of the children of Reuben, Eliezer, son of Shadur, his offering was 1 silver dish, its weight in shekels, 130, 1 silver basin, 70 shekels by the shekel of the holy. Both of them were full of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering. 1 gold pan, 10 shekels, full of incense. 1 bull of the cattle, 1 ram, 1 lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, 1 goat for a sin offering, and for a peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs a year old. This was the offering of Elazur, son of Shadur. On the fifth day, the chieftain of the children of Simeon, Shelumiel, son of Zurishaddai, his offering was 1 silver dish, its weight in shekels 130, 1 silver basin, 70 shekels by the shekel of the holy. Both of them were full of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering. 1 gold pan, 10 shekels, full of incense. 1 bull of the cattle, 1 ram, 1 lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, 1 goat for a sin offering, and for a peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs a year old. This was the offering of Shelumiel, son of Zurishaddai.
Oh, thank you both so much. Let me invite Robert. We're now at verse 42, if you'd like to read for a bit.
Yes, thank you. On the 6th day, Elisaph, the son of Duo, prince of the children of God, offered. His offering was 1 silver charger of the weight of 100 and 30 shekels, a silver bowl of 70 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary, both of them full of fine flour mingled with oil for a meat offering. 1 golden spoon of 10 shekels full of incense, 1 young bullock, 1 ram, 1 lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, and for a sacrifice of peace offerings, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs of the first year. This was the offering of Elisaph, the son of Duel. On the 7th day, Elishama, son of Ammihud, prince of the children of Ephraim, offered. His offering was 1 silver charger, the weight whereof was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary, both of them full of fine flour mingled with oil for a meat offering. 1 golden spoon of 10 shekels full of incense, 1 young bullock, 1 ram, 1 lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, and for a sacrifice of peace offerings, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs of the first year. This was the offering of Elishama, the son of Ammihud.
Thank you so much, Robert. Deborah, would you like to read a little bit? We're at verse 54.
Go. Yes, thank you. We're on 48?
54.
54, thank you. On the 8th day, it was the chieftain of the Manassites, Gamaliel, son of Pedasur. His offering, 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, and 1 silver basin of 70 shekels, according to the sanctuary weight. Both filled with choice flour with oil mixed in for a grain offering. 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 bull of the herd, 1 ram, and 1 lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, 1 goat for a purification offering, and for his sacrifice of well-being, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 yearling lambs. That was the offering of Gamaliel, son of Pedahzur. On the 9th day, it was the chieftain of the Benjaminites, Abidan, son of Gideoni. His offering, 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, and 1 silver basin of 70 shekels by the sanctuary weight, both filled with choice flour with oil mixed in for a grain offering. 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 bull of the herd, 1 ram, and 1 lamb in his first year for a burnt offering, 1 goat for a purification offering, and for his sacrifice of well-being, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 yearling lambs. That was the offering of Abidan, son of Gideoni.
Thank you so much. Dave, would you like to read a little bit? We're at verse 66. Dave, yeah, there you go.
Getting unmuted. On the 10th day, it was the chieftain of the Danites, Ahizer, son of Ammishaddai. His offering, 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, and 1 silver basin of 70 shekels by sanctuary weight, both filled with choice flour with oil mixed in for a meal offering. 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 bull of the herd, 1 ram, and 1 lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, 1 goat for a sin offering, and for his sacrifice of well-being, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 yearling lambs. That was the offering of Ahizer, son of Ammishaddai. On the 11th day, it was the chieftain of the Asherites, Pagiel, son of Akram. His offering, 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, and 1 silver basin of 70 shekels by sanctuary weight, both filled with choice flour with oil mixed in for a meal offering. 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 bull of the herd, 1 ram, and 1 lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, 1 goat for a sin offering, and for his sacrifice of well-being, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 yearling lambs. That was the offering of Pagiel, son of Akram.
Thank you so much, Dave. Mark Thompson, would you like to read we're at verse 78?
Yes, I would. Thank you. On the 12th day, the prince who brought his offering was of the tribe of Naphtali, Ahira son of Enan. His offering was 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, 1 silver dashing basin weighing 70 shekels, according to the value of the sacred shekel, both filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering. 1 gold spoon weighing 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 lamb in its first year as an ascent offering, 1 young he-goat as a sin offering, and for the feast offering, 2 bulls, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 lambs in their first year. This was the offering of Ahira, son of Enan. Bear with me. Sorry. Could you have somebody else read?
Sure.
Thank you.
We're at verse 84. This was the dedication offering for the altar from the chieftains of Israel upon its being anointed. Silver bowls, 12. Silver basins, 12. Gold ladles, 12. Silver per bowl, 130. Per basin, 70. Total silver of vessels, 2,400 sanctuary shekels. The 12 gold ladles filled with incense, 10 sanctuary shekels per ladle. Total gold of the ladles, 120. Total of herd animals for burnt offerings, 12 bulls of rams, 12 of yearling lambs, 12 with their proper meal offerings, of goats for sin offerings, 12. Total of herd animals for sacrifices of well-being, 24 bulls, of rams, 60, of he-goats, 60, of yearling lambs, 60. That was the dedication offering for the altar after its anointing. When Moses went into the tent of meeting to speak with God, he would hear the voice addressing him from above the cover that was on top of the ark of the pact between the 2 cherubim. Thus God spoke to him. Everyone, that is our entire portion for the week, and indeed it is the longest portion in Torah. Thank you all very much for participating in vocalizing and bringing it into our ears. I'd like to share with you a focus study about it, and then we'll have our conversation about it. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out. So as we are entering into this second portion in the book of Numbers, what I saw this year was carrying over from Leviticus some of the same themes, and to put it more visually, some of the same vistas that Leviticus was looking upon. And that has to do with concerns about violations of certain, when certain borders are broached, having to do with the role of the Levites, and as we just concluded with the importance of all the offerings that are brought to the Mishkan. What I saw this year was kind of a slight different take on these same themes that appear in Leviticus. For example, the concern about when there are certain boundaries that are violated, which is in our instance here represented perhaps by the laws of the sota, a woman who has been accused of adultery. Very quickly within Jewish tradition, this becomes less focused on the behavior of the woman and becomes more focused by the rabbis on the behavior and emotional state of the husband. And so that's what the concern seems to be. And it's almost as if when a woman is now being forced to go through this trial, it is almost as if the authority figure is saying, you really want to put your wife through this? Are you sure you want to put your wife through this? As if to have him pause and really consider how he wants to process these feelings that he's had. So, and then we have the laws of the Nazarite. Well, we saw in Leviticus a great deal of concern about what it means to be holy, what it means to be pure. And here is the Nazarite who is vowed, whether man or woman, to dedicate him or herself to be pure for God for a period of time by refraining from drinking or wine or eating grapes, from not cutting one's hair, and from being far away from a dead body. And again, very quickly within Jewish tradition, the Nazarite, rather than being valorized as a heroic figure for being so disciplined in denying himself or herself these other aspects of life that others can come in contact with, becomes derided as and criticized as someone who is denying himself or herself all these wonderful opportunities and pleasures in terms of taking care of one's physical self, in terms of drinking wine and eating grapes, and denying oneself these pleasures that God has made available. And then, of course, all of Leviticus is so focused on the role and responsibilities of the priestly class. And here we saw that most intensely in the verses that Catherine read, because that she read for us what's known as the priestly benediction. Right? The way this becomes performed in a congregation, though, is kind of, in a sense, undermines this distinctive authority that the Levites have. Because traditionally, the way it's performed is this. Those who are able to describe to themselves lineage going back to the Kohanes, they come up in front of the congregation, they place their talit over themselves so that you don't know who they are as an individual. They are representative of the Kohanim. And then they stick their hands out like this, and then they have been prepared prior to coming up before the congregation by members of the Levites. They wash their feet, they help them get ready, then they come up. And then a member of the congregation who is leading the prayer service, then in a very kind of soft voice, says each one of these lines that Catherine read. And then the Kohanim then enunciate that in a loud voice, and then the rest of the congregation says, Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so. And then again, the prayer leader softly announces the second line of that priestly benediction. The Kohanim loudly pronounce it, and once again the congregation says, Ken Yehi Ratzon, and they go through that a third time. So the Kohanim have to be prompted to announce what that verse is, and they can't continue until the congregation says, Ken Yehi Ratzon. So it is what was initially presented in our text here as this supreme and exclusive realm of the Levites, and in particular the Kohanim, now becomes something that the entire congregation has to participate in order for this to become effectuated. So what I read then this year was that although our portion is carrying over some themes that we encountered in the book of Leviticus, it is carrying them over in a way that quickly allows a very different point of view to develop. And we saw that we're going to see that in a very early midrash about something as clearly precise as what we all read in the conclusion here with the different offerings that each tribe was to make over the course of 12 days. And of course, as we read them, we saw, well, each tribe was bringing the same thing. And here is what this early midrash says about that. Our rabbis say that although they all presented similar offerings, they meant by them to symbolize great events, which each one selected in accordance with their own judgment. So what this midrash is suggesting is that even though they're all bringing the same things, each tribe had an intentionality, an understanding, an interpretation of what those gifts mean that was unique to them and their tribes. So infused with this conformity was this bit of individualized creativity and innovation by each of the tribes. So we're going to go through a series of commentators from different spectrums along the Jewish religious tradition and from different centuries. And we're going to explore this notion that the book of Numbers, and here in the Parshat Naso in particular, how it lends itself to this different interpretive capacity that distinguishes it from what we encountered in the book of Leviticus about the same themes. So our first one is from the 20th century Jewish philosopher Emmanuel Levinas from his book Beyond the Verse. This invitation to seek and decipher, to midrash, already constitutes the reader's participation in the revelation in Scripture. The reader, in his own fashion, is a scribe. This provides us with a first indication of what we might call the status of the revelation. Its word comes from elsewhere, from outside, and simultaneously dwelling in the person who receives it. So it is almost as if Emmanuel Levinas is reading all these verses that we just read about these 12 tribes bringing these offerings, because the requirement comes from outside of them, and they're all bringing the same thing. But what they each understood those offerings to be was unique to each one of those tribes. So we're going to move on to a commentary from Chaim Yosef David Azulai, who was a Sephardic rabbi, born in Jerusalem, born about 1724, lived about 1806. He was born into a great family of great Talmudists and Kabbalists, and he himself was a great scholar, and he was honored to serve as a diplomat to go forth to many different Jewish communities, both in Europe and throughout the Middle East. And here is what he wrote. He said, when a person utters words of Torah, he never ceases to create spiritual potencies and new lights. For at all times, indeed at every moment, the composition of the inner linguistic elements changes in accordance with the condition and rank of this moment, and in accordance with the names that flare up within him at this moment. So again, Rav Azulai is sharing with us that although we may be looking at these same words that we call Torah, when one begins to read them, articulate them, one can't help but infuse them with some degree of innovation, of bringing new understanding and new light through them. Number 6 on the study sheet is by Neil Gilman, who was one of the great teachers at the Jewish Theological Seminary. And he wrote a wonderful book called Sacred Fragments, and this is from that book. A person who looks to religion as a source of authority who wants final and absolute answers to issues of belief and practice, who is impatient with pluralistic or indecisive answers to ultimate questions, will embrace the traditionalist position and view Torah as literally and verbally revealed. In contrast is someone who's prepared to live with ambiguity and indecision, who accepts the inevitability of different points of view on complex moral, theological, and spiritual issues, and who is prepared to become engaged in the issues. Here, Neil Gilman, I think, is drawing the distinction between people who are coming to this material for final and absolute answers, and those who are coming to it with a readiness to contribute to the understanding of what this material is all about. And here, our final commentator is Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who is one of the leaders of the Chabad movement for many decades in the middle of the 20th century. And he said this: often we tend to see a tension between conformity and creativity, between tradition and innovation. On the one hand, we recognize the bedrock of principles upon which a meaningful existence must rest, the time-tested truths which transcend cultures and generation. On the other, we are faced with the powerful drive to create, to personalize, to grow and soar with our individualized talents and tools. Even as they relate to the ultimate common denominator of their bond with God, they each bring to the experience the richness of their own creative souls. I'd like to share with you two paintings, which are on the front of our study sheet. The one on the left by Camille Pizarro, the one on the right by Paul Cézanne. Pizarro and Cézanne met about 1861 when they were both studying at the Académie Suisse, which was an alternative to the establishment art schools in France at the time. And this was a place where you could go and practice your art, and there was no requirement as to how you painted or what you painted, unlike in the establishment studios. And this was a place where artists commented on one another, where there was a great deal of innovation. And in particular, Pizarro and Cézanne became very, very close friends. In the Jewish study tradition, within the Beit Midrash, we have the notion of chevruta, a pair of people who would become study partners, and they will form a bond that's full of devotion, love, attachment. They will quiz one another, they will challenge one another, they will test one another, they will inform one another. And even within that environment of challenge and testing, the bond of affection and attachment only grows deeper and deeper. If we could apply that to any of the artists within the Impressionist movement, I would say that Pizarro and Cézanne were chevruta. They were very close, and for over a 10-year period of time, Cézanne would come and visit and stay with Pizarro after Pizarro had moved out of Paris, northwest into the village of Pontoise. And he would come out there, and sometimes he would stay so long, he would sleep on the floor. The two of them would go out into the fields of the countryside with their easels. They would march miles upon miles, and then they'd set up their easels, and then they'd look upon the same scene, and they'd each paint it. But they paint what they saw very differently. And not only did they paint what they saw differently, they saw what was before them differently, and that's what got expressed on the canvas. So, for example, here on the left we have the painting by Pizarro, and it is consists of this field in the front with some trees, and then there's a path, and on the left there's a horseback rider, and on the right there's a peasant woman with a young child. next to the path, there's a river. Across the river, there are these trees and houses, and above all that in the background, sky with clouds. On the right, we have Cézanne looking out on a landscape in the same community, and he paints something very different. Because what Cézanne was really consumed by was the geometry of what he saw. And he tried to express the geometry, as he's doing here, by having these verticalities represented by the houses and the trees in front, and by a tree way in the background, and then by these horizontals with the fields serving as the horizontals, and very little sky, because he was less concerned with the ephemeral effect of light and atmosphere, as most of the Impressionists were. And as was in the case with most of his landscapes, in this one, there are no human figures. That was not really what his focus was. So whereas Pizarro, both with his palette and with his brushstroke, creates something that is soft, ephemeral, serene, gentle, and there's almost this lovely convergence of nature and human habitation. For Cézanne, it is mostly a matter of seeing there the faceted planes that make up reality. And his experimentation with those nature of the geometry, the planes of dimensions, and his playing, if you will, his disregard for any traditional sense of perspective, eventually he becomes really the forefather of what becomes the Cubist movement that's developed by Picasso and Georges Braque. So what is amazing, though, to me is, like Hevruta within the Beit Midrash, they understood different things in the text. They may have interpreted the text differently, but their bond of affection for each other was extraordinary. And here is indeed what Pizarro said about their time together. He became influenced by me at Pontoise, and I by him. We were always together, but each of us unquestionably retained the only thing that counts, our own sensation. So they had this devotion to one another, this respect to one another, but it didn't bother them that they saw different things, that they wanted to represent what they saw in very different style. Indeed, perhaps it only reinforced their affection for one another. And for his part, Cézanne, when he had his final exhibit in his home community back in southern France in 1906, the year that he died, he insisted that after his name on each one of the exhibition points, it would say Cézanne, student of Pizarro. That was how much affection he had for Camille Pizarro. So I share that all with you because, to me, this year, reading this material, I go back to what Rabbi Schneerson said in his comment. Even as they relate to the ultimate common denominator of their bond with God, they each bring to the experience the richness of their own creative souls. And I see that not only with Pizarro and Cézanne looking out on the countryside of Pontoise, but it struck me that that's what the entirety of Torah is also consists of. It consists of a richness of creative souls who are seeing phenomena, the same phenomena, but they are seeing different aspects of it, different dimensions of it. And it wants to share that with us and doesn't insist that we embrace any singular point of view. And that, I think, is why the Midrash that we read, and indeed all of rabbinic commentary and Jewish commentary, that follows the example that Torah has set, that we can bring different points of view and extract different dimensions to this material and share that. And that doesn't cause any undermining of being involved in a unique, rich tradition. In fact, it only probably is an honoring of that tradition by emphasizing that we're bringing the richness of creative souls to something that is truly infinite in its understanding and meaning. So with that, I'd love to know what you experienced and what you thought about as we read through this material. If you raise your hand, I'd love to call upon you. Go ahead, Jay. Go ahead and unmute and share with us.
Thank you, Rabbi. What I hear in this year now, where we're at 100 plus, a century and a half after these two gentlemen shared chavrusa, and centuries and centuries after the tribes each presented their fealty, their allegiance, to God in different ways, their offerings. And as they say in, allegorically, how many tribes are lost? I'm Yisrael. How many tribes are lost? What I see, especially when I saw Menachem Mendel Schneerson of blessed memory, I think that the future, which we're in the future of Judaism from the things that we're reading about, but in the future from now, I believe that my entire vision, my entire impression of fundamentalism, I think fundamentalism has been an external force on me saying, Jews, you got to be fundamental. Look at those Orthodox, they're fundamental. But actually, here you have Mendel Schneerson, who's a descendant, I believe, of the Baal Shem Tov, saying, your creativity and your individualized talents and tools, they are gifts. They are actually elevations to God. Whereas I can only contrast this, Rabbi, to ritualistic services and my lack of any knowledge of what actually might go on in this respect in other religions, be they of the Christian or the Islamic or whatever. But what's happened here is there was a responsibility on the part of a Jew to do something and be yourself. And when you share it with someone else, be in chavrusa, be in acceptance, be a critic, be gentle. And that's the future of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. And what you're also sharing is in part what Levinas was saying about to become a reader is to become a writer, because this is a tradition that invites that degree of engagement with creative engagement with the material. So thank you. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I was looking at these paintings and I was intrigued by some of the differences between them. And I guess the way I could describe it, first of all, is that Pizarro's vision is an exterior vision because we notice the clouds, we notice the time of day because of the shadows. And we see, even though we see people, he doesn't seem to be as interested in the people as in the fact that they are kind of integral to the scene. They sort of fade into the scene, into the scenery. And if we look at Cézanne's painting, we really can't situate it in terms of time of day. What we see is that those buildings really held an appeal for him. Those houses, because as you said, they take on geometric form. So it seems to be a more sort of interiorized vision of the landscape. sort of taking it in and thinking about its features independently of what may be going on out there.
Yeah, so one of the big differences between, well, one of the reasons that Cézanne eventually breaks from the Impressionists was that the Impressionists were always kind of emphasizing how transitory things are. They were playing with the effects of light and how things change and things never stay the same. And so they emphasize that kind of transitory nature of existence and its capacity to constantly be evolving. And Cézanne wanted to focus on the enduring, solid aspects of reality, and so he turns to geometry, as a way to do that. I do want to say, though, that there is this painting at the Metropolitan Museum of Art that, as a little boy, I was just drawn to, and it's a portrait Cézanne did of his wife, and it is there is such both affection that it's evident, and there's also a sadness and a pathos that he conveys in this painting of hers that I'd find myself just drawn to, and I would engage in these conversations with her. She looked like she needed someone to talk to or talk with. So Cézanne certainly had that. He didn't get along with a lot of people. Cézanne, he was a rather he was considered a madman and presented himself that way, distancing himself from people. So these are all interesting things, and I love the different differentiations that you pointed out. Thank you so much, Catherine. Let me call upon Robert, and then Richard here.
Well, good evening. Thank you again for a lovely evening. I hope Mark doesn't get upset with me for saying this, but as you were, with the exception of your final comment, the more you talked about these two, I thought of Mark and myself. And this is the God's honest truth. We've known each other 35 years. We have not spent more than a dozen hours together. It is such a heart relationship. And, as I think about this, there's a passion on both of our parts for truth, for meaning, and we have the courage in our friendship to share fully what we believe and never trespass on the belief of another.
Mm.
And, our theology is entirely different, but the whole purpose of religion is the betterment of humanity and bringing us close together. As I keep saying, forget the label. What's in the heart? And so, these two gentlemen knew themselves, and they had the courage to paint what they saw, and they weren't driven by what others thought. To me, that is the mark of a true artist, and I think it's the mark of a true life. And I hope I'm not overstepping myself, but one of the things I don't see in most of the people I come in contact with is a passion for truth, a passion to explore life, a passion to have experiences with other people, and to recognize this is just one small planet. And guess what? We're all family, whether you like it or not. This is one human family. And if we just look beyond ourselves and into the hearts, not the shells, but the pearls, the hearts, if you will, of people, we find beauty everywhere. Beauty absolutely everywhere. Not in every person to the same extent. There are some rascals out there. But by and large, there's beauty to be painted on the canvas of our own hearts in respect and love and caring and our own enlightenment. And I'm so thankful for Mark inviting me to this. But as you describe these two artists, I mean, that's just Mark and me. That's just it. And when we're together, even on the phone, it's just a unique love relationship. we've had for 35 years.
Robert, thank you so much for such a beautiful expression of love, affection, sharing, learning, and it's indeed a very sacred relationship that you've just described. Thank you so much for being willing to acknowledge that. Thank you.
May I respond?
Let me call upon Mark. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Robert, it's really amazing. We are kindred spirits because I was thinking the same thing. And had I raised my hand earlier than you, I would have said the exact same thing you did. So yeah, it's very special that we've been able every almost after every session that we have together as a group, Robert and I spend another half hour or hour on the phone, much to my wife's chagrin sometimes. And it's really wonderful because we don't often agree. And yet we really test each other's belief systems and hearts. And it always ends up with an expression of love. So thank you for that. I also wanted to add my own element of irreverence here because I can't help it. It just came out of me when I was reading about all these chieftains making these donations. And I was thinking about an album that was very popular in the 60s called You Don't Have to Be Jewish. I don't know if any of you remember it, but I guess it's during the High Holy Days and people are making their pledges. And one man stands up and he says, I also pledge $1,000.
So
some things never change.
Yeah, that you don't have to be Jewish. The tagline that I remember mostly from when I was growing up had to do with Levi's rye bread. You don't have to be Jewish to love Levi's rye bread. So, but the two of you have pointed out something, which is that when we're talking about that nature of Hevruta, that engagement over something, whether it's a text, whether it's over work, whether it's over what you see in the world, but that the nature of that relationship at its heart is you're not trying to convince the other person, you're not trying to defeat the other person's point of view. What you're primarily trying to do is, one, you are trying to learn about the other person, and in learning about the other person, you're trying to help the other person actually expand their point of view. And when you do that, you each walk away from it having become a more grown and developed person. You're enriched. So thank you for sharing, the two of you, the enrichment that you've had over these decades with one another. Let me call upon Richard here, and then I'll get to David and Susan and David.
Thank you, Rabbi. Two things. One is I've been telling myself that one reads Torah so they can learn how to behave ethically, and you try to behave ethically for the sake of the world so that you can understand Torah. But you have said, and you reached it today, the business of having two souls, two souls, a beast soul and our own soul. And I see that as it gets developed over time. You don't just start with this soul and keep going. It's always being built. And I think what you were saying today about the freedom we have and the responsibility we have to continue to challenge or take a look at what this might mean to me. And anytime I read in here, I'll come up something, and it will trigger something that's nascent in my growing soul. And so I will explore that and fill out who I really am or what my soul's really all about. And Judaism and Torah study gives you the opportunity to do that. And then more and more you integrate into your behavior the possibility that you can behave that way in the social universe and make a better vibration amongst human beings, especially now that everything's falling apart. But it's a wonderful opportunity to acknowledge where you're triggered with anger or where you're triggered with joy, and bring that joyous face into the world rather than the challenge that only makes people go farther to their fundamentalism. And I think that you're speaking, that this speaks to that. No, keep reading this. Put this in your heart, and that's where love comes, and love comes into compassion. And now we have a new sect of religion in the world that is calling empathy a sin. Wow.
Richard, thank you for both sharing that kind of overall perspective and then also how it affects you. I love that notion about this nascent, these nascent aspects and how you can look at this material and it helps bring that out. And I love that you point out how when we have a curiosity about the other and ourselves as well, that leads to developing our love and compassion.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. So let me come on, David and Susan.
So I was struck by verse 89 when it talks about, I mean, we've gone through all of these 12 tribes presenting all of these offerings. By the time you get to the 12th tribe, you kind of forget what the offerings might have been for and about. And then there's this last verse that just says, it was for them so that they could feel close to God.
Mm.
And that even Moses couldn't see God. He could only hear him. And I was just struck by that last verse.
And and that notion about hearing is really the primary verb that we're asked to perform is to hear. Yeah. And as we, in the context of the way we're talking about this material, what also may be the case is what you hear, what I hear, what David hears, and what Moses hears might not all be the same thing. But if we then share what we hear, then we become a true, growing, sacred community. Yeah. And that is indeed what the Midrash about what happened at Mount Sinai was trying to explain to us, that if there were 600,000 people at the foot of Mount Sinai, there were 6,000 different hearings, because each person heard according to their own capacity and their own inclination. And that 600,000 different kinds of hearing, rather than being a notion of creating chaos within a community, rather than creating an obstacle to accessing a unity that we call God, is actually the pathway to that unity, and the pathway to creating community. So thanks for bringing us back to that key point there about Moses going in, and it's between the two cherubim who are facing one another where the voice comes through. When people face one another, that's when the voice comes through. David, did you want to share something, because you had your hand up earlier?
Well, I'm going to pass on this.
Okay.
I said before, but I'll pass.
Thank you so much. Let me cohere our time together by saying that when we went through this list of commentaries that crossed the spectrum within the Jewish community, that crossed centuries, and I want to acknowledge that the richness of creative souls that Rabbi Schneerson talks about is not just something that is allocated to a few people. It is what is it we know we all bring something to this moment of encounter and listening. And what is incumbent upon us is not just to listen, but then to do, which is what Jay was talking about. It's incumbent upon us to listen and then to do, part of which is to share, to engage, and then to live our lives in accordance with that divine encounter that we've had. So I'm so grateful for all of the rich creative souls that I'm blessed to be a part of in this community of study and gathering. God bless you all. I look forward to our next time together. Be well, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
so much.
Rabbi.
Very elucidating. Very good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.